What is up, my Lorcana Goons, and welcome back to the Lorcana Goons channel. You are watching another episode of our Meta Watch Mondays series, where Zach Stone and I go over your deck lists from this weekend that have seen some tournament results. And I know a lot of us are used to seeing a lot of Blurple in this opening Fabled format, but we're here to say that it's not just blue and purple dominating the meta anymore. There's a lot of outliers in this meta, and I think that's going to be the story of this weekend. Some people winning tournaments with decks that aren't, but Blurple's still taking a lot of the top 8 and even some first place spots. But Zach Stone, we're starting off with the top 8 Amber Steel deck list by Mitchell Resk here from the Charlie's Collectibles Show Invitational Qualifier. This tournament was huge. It had 448 players. We knew a lot of friends who were playing in this tournament. It was a cutthroat event.
This was such an amazing weekend for Lorcana. I think there was multiple tournaments going on. We had some in our local area too, but right here taking the top 8 Amber Steel aggro. A lot of this deck was talked about a lot this week, and a lot of people weren't so sure if they were going to get Dumbos in time. I know there's still some difficulty acquiring some of the Fabled product right now, but for what it's worth, you can play Amber Steel aggro, only needing just the new Nala. This is the Undressed Lioness, and I believe it's just a 2-cost 0/2 character with 2 lore, although it does gain additional lore value and resist 1 while has no damage. So there's your new Piglet, and it is chocked full of a bunch of 2 lore questers. Of course, we have Daisy Duck coming in, and Mr. Arrow. This is from the Azurite Sea, a 2-cost 1/2 with resist 1 that can also quest for 2. Really good to play alongside the Lady Family Dog, in my opinion. Of course, Tiana, the restaurant owner, is just making a big splash right now, coming in really high on prices. But overall, there's still some removal that I like to see. Strength of a Raging Fire and Fire the Cannons.
Yeah, Tiana was a card that people were terrified of when we understood what was going to be rotated in and out. And it's cool to see that it actually is making an impact on the meta, because that curve from turn 1 character, turn 2 character, then you drop a Tiana to protect them all is really strong. And you could even drop a Pluto after that, so that your Pluto has bodyguard to protect all your characters. But Jim Deere is another bodyguard that I want to mention in this deck, because the Lady Family Dog into Jim Deere combo is really strong. You can play turn 1 Daisy, that's a 2 lore quester. Turn 2 Nala, that's a 3 lore quester. And then turn 3, Lady Family Dog plus a Jim Deere to protect them all. I like it. We're playing ducks, we're playing dogs, we're playing bodyguards to protect them all. It feels like a very strong aggro deck. And look who it is, Zach Stone. In top 4 of the Charlie's Collectible Show, we have none other than someone who's been on the channel as a guest for some of our videos, Jeremy Bertarioni, one of the members of the Club Lorcana podcast, and also a really good friend to Zan Syed. They play test together. He's a very well-known player in the Lorcana community. Congrats on making it all the way to top 4 with Sapphire Emerald. You know me, Zach. I love the Sea Cow deck. I love Clarabelle, and ramping into Clarabelle is so broken. If you're not playing Dumbo / an Amethyst evasive deck, you're probably going to be gravitating towards either a aggro Amber Steel or maybe an Under the Sea strategy, because this Under the Sea deck is probably what you want to do to clear the board. It's the only board wipe we have realistically right now in Lorcana, and combo that off with Heads Held High, or Triple H as you can call it. Under the Sea is going to be able to put all the opposing characters with 2 strength or less to the bottom of the deck, and that's going to be characters with 5 strength at least now with that combo.
Let's talk about this deck list. Let's talk about a couple other cards here. We have the Donald Duck, the Perfect Gentleman. This is the Sad Beast at Home that was also rotated back into the meta. And let's be real here. You have 2 ducks you can play for 4 ink on turn 3 normally for Sapphire. So you're finding your curve going like 1, 2, 4, 5, but it's a lot of shift characters. So we could be very flexible here, like Basil into Tipo, into shift Basil, into Sing like Under the Sea on turn 3. Isn't that kind of cool?
Yeah, I like the shiftability of these characters. We're playing 4 copies of Clarabelle the Contendant Wallflower and Clarabelle the Clumsy Guest, which, that's a lot of ways to shift onto your cow. And that's probably one of the easiest ways to sing Under the Sea, because it is an 8-cost sing together song, but being able to, combo off a duck followed by a shift Clarabelle, that's going to be more than enough to sing Under the Sea. And you can also use Heads Held High as a sing together. So both these cards are sing together cards. I really want to stress that enough, because you have a lot of characters that kind of stick around this like 5-6 cost without shifting. I think John Silver and Basil are very strong in this deck too, because you're going to be ramping with your Tipos, Sail the Azurite Seas, and constantly adding more and more to your card pool and your overall like ink inventory. Eventually, you're going to be able to just drop the Clarabelle, drop the Basil without needing to shift Clarabelle anyway. And in third place of this Charlie's Collectible Show 25K, we have Corey Patrick, member of Team Maelstrom. Huge shout out, taking Blurple to top 3 with second starter to right being played. And we've seen this before. I feel like players have been experimenting with different tools in Blurple, and second starter to right is one that we are seeing a lot throughout this weekend. This card says draw 5, and people have been using Finders Keepers in their deck, but I feel like why not use both? We don't see it in this deck list, but draw. Why draw 3 when you can draw 5 is what I've been saying all weekend. And in combination with some awesome characters that you can use to sing together that are 5 cost, you only need 2 on the board, two 5-cost characters to sing this song. You have Elsa, Belle, and the Baymax Armored Companion. This card's seeing a lot of play this weekend as well. It's going to be able to remove 2 damage from one of your characters while giving yourself 2 lore when he's played and when he quests. So potentially a 4 lore quester while also playing around Belle Accomplished Mystic. These are some power cards in the meta that you might want to consider playing in your Sapphire Amethyst deck.
Yeah, I actually was able to watch some of the stream going on, and R&B and Humble were brought on and discussing and talking about their list. I don't know if you knew this, Kevin, but the night before, R&B, I think, like, told them, like, hey, let's just change 9 cards out of our list right now. And I think Develop Your Brain was a card that they actually recently added in, and they talked about how it like did their deck wonders, that they were able to just find the appropriate pieces. You are playing cards like Second Starter right into the Unknown, so you can dig for the draw power, dig for the removal, and you can also play those that turn, because if you have characters that can sing those songs, those are cards that will be ready to use. Also, the Hypnotic Strength was talked about quite a bit, because they said going into this meta, they felt like it was just going to be like the appropriate card needed to respond to like the different decks that were going to be popping out. And they also know that it was very popular in that area to play like Purple Steel Illusion dot deck, I would say, and every Hypnotic Strength became like a Dragonfire that costed 2 and also drew you a card. So it was overall, I think, an insane like tournament with a lot of decks coming in and doing well, and a lot of different decks that people thought would do well that didn't. And honestly, like Blurple was not at all in that conversation. I think people knew that this is one of the best decks in the room, and they made a lot of appropriate choices. So kudos to Team Maelstrom for bringing in the heat.
Yeah, it is the Dumbo deck. And I do really quick want to mention the Develop Your Brain here, because I saw a lot of visions of the future in Blurple decks, and I think Develop Your Brain just might be better, right? Because if you don't find your ramp, you're going to be 902 steps behind, as I like to say. And Develop Your Brain on turn 1 to find your T-Pull or your Sail that you haven't seen just might be the card you need in your Blurple decks. But yeah, huge shout out to Team Maelstrom and Corey Patrick for this one.
And speaking of the Amethyst Steel Illusion deck, coming in first place, Thiago, I think it's just been on a tear. Honestly, like most like upbreaking superstar coming into the Lorcana scene right now with the Amethyst Steel Illusion deck. I think he's crushing it in Fabled. He's like figured out that like low costed characters and just like always playing to the board is where you should be in a deck like this. And let's just look at the overall stats, because
Yeah.
the 1/4 cost, the 2 cost 3/3, the 3 cost 4/4. These aren't cards to play around with. You don't have the appropriate tools in your deck to deal with these, like Hypnotic Strengths, or some Sapphire decks are playing like Helping Hand right now. You don't have efficient removal, and you're going to lose to the board because they are just overstated characters. I think there is a little bit of a balance with the whole Vanish keyword, but no one's playing any like efficient answers or like any good ones right now. It's just we also only have like a handful of them that like cycle cards. So it's powerful. It's good, it's strong, and it's here to stay. But the Treasure Guardian also giving you the additional draw power is too clean, honestly. Shout outs to Thiago for taking down this $25,000 tournament.
Yeah, illusion characters. Who'd have thought? Overstated characters are very strong, and I felt like this is something that I'm so glad to see pop off in this meta because for a lot of time people were kind of writing off illusion characters as, oh, they all just die to fire the cannons, right? But if my opponent's going to waste the fire the cannons on a Palace Guard, I'm cool with that. If they're going to waste a Strength of Raging Fire on a Raja on a Giant Cobra, by all means, use up your the cards in your hand. Really, it's Hypnotic Strength that kind of is the one that is good, or the cards that you draw because they replace themselves, right? But you're noticing that we don't see Iago in this illusion deck. And I think that's very important to note because you have only a certain limited amount of 4-cost slots you can really commit to in a deck like this. Dumbo, Genie, and then the Treasure Guardian being a third 4-cost card that lets you draw cards. And Iago probably doesn't fit the bill in this scenario, mainly because, again, if at 4 cost, if your opponent does respond with a Hypnotic Strength, that does feel bad.com. Whereas Giant Cobra feels a little bit less bad. It'll net you 2 lore still on play, so you'll still get the value there at least. And what I really like about this Zack Stone is that it's playing Doc, it's playing Giant Cobra, it's playing the White Rose. You have so many ways to gain lore and refill your hand with Genie. Like, these are very oppressive cards, and little by little, you gain small increments of lore. And we don't have Merlin Goat anymore to close the game out, but you can still top deck a Giant Cobra and ditch discard a card and gain those final 2 lore. And that's what I love about this deck, is that everyone is so focused on trying to control the game with these big Hades, these big cards, and you have Thiago kind of going under everybody, just gaining small lore and finishing it off before they even realize it's over. But there was a lot of tournaments over the weekend, and you were able to watch a lot of them on stream, including one that Zack Stone and I were casting. Huge shout out to Snapquester Mage and the San Diego Goats community. We were able to cast a huge tournament. It was around almost 60 players, and we had the SoulCal community all pop out, and there is a live stream, so if you guys want to check out that video, it'll be on Snapquester Mage's YouTube channel, and it's also available on Twitch, on Jujutron's Twitch. So that was really fun, Zack Stone. We got to debut our casting capabilities on stream, and on top of that, I got to cast a game by my cousin who made top 4, Chris Martinez, with his Amber Steel deck list. I try to keep it as unbiased as possible, but it was really fun to be able to witness my cousin win his winning in on stream with an Amber Steel aggro deck that he's been hyping up, to me at least. He's been saying he's been doing really well, especially because he loves the idea of Aurora into Tiana, followed by a Lady Family Dog with a Prince Bodyguard to kind of secure the early game when you're going first. And sometimes card games are lucky, and he said that he won like 5 of his die rolls that day. So when you're going first with an aggro deck and you draw the 1, 2, 3 line you need, you can kind of secure some of these games pretty quick. And I really want to highlight this Bolt card right here. This is the Bolt down but not out. He's a 3-cost inkable character, 0 strength, 4 willpower, and he quests for 4. And I feel like we really got to see the power of this card. It's not the first time that I've seen people try and use this card in a deck, but now it has a lot of use in the aggro Amber Steel deck because you can protect it with Tiana on curve, or like I was saying earlier, you can protect it with a Prince.
Yeah, I was trying to convince him to name this deck Wendy's because it's like 4, 4, 4, 4 everywhere, right? And it's another Amber Steel aggro deck, but let's talk about the Prince, right? Let's talk about that bodyguard because we saw the Jim Deere in the previous one, and the only difference between Jim Deere and the Prince are 2 things. It's 1 more willpower and inkability versus uninkability. There is some classifications there that also separate them too, but there is not any utility. Like no one's playing any cards that really matter. But I personally think the Jim Deere might make more sense because there's a lot of uninkables in this specific deck list. And if you want to cut back on some of the uninkables, you can just play almost the same card and give up 1 less strength, give up 1 less willpower. But the Pluto is also going to fit in that slot very well too. Dropping Tiana, and if it goes unanswered, just tapping her sideways, dropping a Pluto, and it's just impossible to get rid of everything on the board. You've accumulated so much lore that like anything you play becomes a threat. And the Strength of a Raging Fire is just solid removal tool that Steel still has access to. You are able to kind of check the board a little bit with the Shift Rhino, but I think you just want to turn everything sideways in a deck like this.
Yeah, Jim Deere versus Prince argument is actually something we got into in the car ride home, and I do want to hear your guys' opinions in the comments because I was saying the Prince is a little bit irrelevant with all these genies and Elsas running around, especially in the Blurple matchup when they're ramping. That 1 extra willpower, in my opinion, does make a pretty big impact. But what do you guys think of the comments of Amber Steel aggro and the Jim Deere versus Prince debate that me and Zach are going on right now? And huge shout out to third place, Daniel Learman, for getting top four with Blurple, actually mentioning to us that this was his first big tournament. So that's really cool to hear, man. You go to your first big event, like kind of semi-regional event, and you end up in the top cut with a lot of amazing players. So congrats to you. And you're featuring two copies of the Ana right here. This is the magical mission over here. She's a 6-cost character, 3 strength, 6 willpower, shift 4. We don't play any shift targets, but this character does have support. And when you quest with her, if you got an Elsa on the board, you can draw a card. And I think that the Elsa Spirit of Winter, Shift Elsa, is very relevant in this meta. It's such a good card, so I'm totally down to play this Ana alongside her too. And in second place of this San Diego Goats Enchanted Celebration Tournament, we have Isaias Barrera over here playing Sapphire Steel, a personal friend of Zach Stone and I's actually. We've known this guy for a long time from our old card game Yu-Gi-Oh days, but this deck featuring cards like Vincenzo Santorini, Hades, Giant Tinkerbell, and Beyond the Horizon. I really like the concept of this deck, and Izzy did give credit to the original deck builder, deck pilot from the Anaheim 6K last week. Apparently, somebody went first in Swiss with Sapphire Steel, and that's pretty cool to see. So he kind of talked to them about their deck list and ended up coming to the conclusion that you can ramp into a 7-cost character by turn 4, I believe, and start singing Beyond the Horizon, Strength of a Raging Fire, etc., etc. The combination of Tipo and Pleakley is something that we got to witness on stream multiple times, and just felt like such a consistent combo to be able to get into your Vincenzos or your Hades before your opponent can even get to their Elsas and Genies.
Yeah, I want to talk about how this synergy with the Mulan into the Tipo into the Pleakley worked so well. Mulan just being able to like dig you a little bit further and finding those pieces, being able to Tipo to get the acceleration even more. And what's really cool is I saw him do this twice, where he would set up that line of play and go sail, ink twice, quest, Pleakley, ink the character he quested with, and like you said, their 7-cost character came down next turn with Hades or the Vincenzo Santorini. I love it. I was kind of in awe with how well the deck was working
Yeah,
and
me
how
too.
powerful it was.
Yeah.
Honestly, he was just dropping bodies, bringing out big questers too, and checking a lot of the evasive threats with the Jasmine Fearless Princess or the Robin Unrivaled Archer. Honestly, very strong deck. You Sapphire Steel enthusiasts right now, I think, are
Yeah.
happy
Yeah.
because you guys get to play your favorite deck again,
I
and
think
it's a little scary, honestly.
I think this is the way to play it. I think a lot of people have been kind of toying with different Sapphire Steel ways to play, and there's some other Sapphire Steel decks in this video that are coming up, by the way. But I think this is one of my favorite ways to play it because being able to ramp into the Jasmine Fearless Princess or even the Robin Hood, like you mentioned, they're such powerful tools against the Blurple deck. We saw Izzy be able to slow the game down. It was such a crazy finals, even though Izzy did lose 2-0. It was such an insane finals because that second game we saw 7 copies of Hades, the Infernal Schemer, hit the board, and that's kind of what it boiled down to. At some point, you had the Hades Wars, but you're able to slow the game down and get to that point with the use of your evasive swingers like Robin Hood and Jasmine. So ramping into those cards, very, very strong in this meta. And here we have the first place deck list by Edward Romero. This is an Amethyst Sapphire, a Blurple deck list. We've been expecting this. I do want to note the 4 copies of Madam Mim Elephant in this deck list. We got to see the power of this card in a lot of his games. It feels like bouncing back your Tipos, bouncing back your Basils, and replaying them just so you can have extra lore is very strong in the mirror match. And against the steel matchups, just slapping a big elephant on board with 7 willpower will stop your opponent from getting a little too greedy with their plays.
Got a couple different elephants in this deck, and honestly, it was an elephant of a finals match. If you guys ever wanted to watch that VOD, it is available on Snapquester Mage's YouTube channel, and we aren't lying. Game 2, 7 Hades. I count 7 Hades came down onto the board. It was an amazing game to see. And also, both of these Sapphire players did not see turn 2 ramp. So you got to see the most fairest Sapphire decks play the hardest match out. And again, shout outs to Edward for taking it down. A guy I've known since the beginning of my tenure into Lorcana. And well played, because you've played a lot of different decks. I think I was talking about this on the stream. Played a bunch of different decks, but you finally pulled it off and got there with the Sapphire Amethyst combo. So shout outs to you, bro. And honestly, guys, another blue steel deck, but I'm going to say this, that no color combo except Blurple feels like it's the same type of deck. Like you don't know what you're playing against, even if they're playing this color combo. And I love this meta for So Blue Steel Allies taking top 16 at the Ink Open Core Constructed 10K. I know this one was also live streamed too. And shout outs to Baker and all you casters out
Yep,
there that
yep.
were holding it down
JDZ.
because it was an amazing tournament, amazing turnout. It was hard to decide where you wanted to go play Lorcana this weekend. I think we're getting a little spoiled right now as Illumineers, but
Yeah.
I really, really, really want to just talk about a couple cards here, right? We have Bagheera. This is the Guardian Jaguar, a bodyguarded character that's also an ally, but during your opponent's turn, when banished, it does deal 2 damage to each opposing character. And that's some decent removal that might be a little tricky to deal with. And as well as the Jasmine Strategist. I love the combo of turn 1 Jasmine, shift Jasmine Quest, find an ally, do it again next turn, and pleekly both of those characters into your inkwell so you have 5 ink ready to go. Able to drop your Scar, finally Kings, or even set up the Tinkerbell a little early.
This Scar, we need to talk about this Scar card. It's a legendary, it's an enchanted from the new set, and I feel like the times I've lost to this Blue Steel Ally deck is when this Scar resolves more than once. Sometimes even just one time, being able to draw yourself up to like 5, 6, 7 cards with some of these characters. I've seen it used with Pluto before, using it with Bagheera is probably very strong, using it with your Genie. The Satisfied Dragon lets you draw 4 cards and discard 2. It's a really strong way to find your Vincenzos, your Hades, your Strength of Raging Fires, and to be able to constantly clear the board. And another card that is starting to see some more and more play is this Lilo Best Explorer Ever. You have your Genies and your Mr. Smees here to be able to challenge into evasive characters, but they both only have 3 strength, right? So it can be a little difficult to remove the Elsas and the Genies with these characters, the Amethyst Genie at least. But you play these characters out. If your opponent quests, you can punish them by dropping this Lilo on board. Now they'll both swing for 5. And you may not have noticed, but Pleakley's also an alien, Zach Stone. So after you ramp with him, you'll be able to put some extra pressure on the board with this Lilo Best Explorer Ever. And, you know, you could potentially give this Pleakley an extra 5 strength after you quest it, and you could challenge readied characters. So this could clear an opposing Jasmine in a mirror match, actually, if it's readied. I think it's pretty cool, the little synergies you have in this Blue Steel Ally deck. And we got to mention Chicha, the devoted mother over here, a 2-cost uninkable, 3 copies in this deck that has support and the ability to let you draw an extra card every time you ink for the 2nd time this turn. You combo this off with Donald Duck, the focused Flatfoot, and you'll be able to draw cards every time you ink for the 2nd time, maybe Pleakley as well. So I think it's a pretty cool card. And it's kind of like Basil. It has support, so you have that same type of synergy where, you know, if your opponent is staring down a Chicha and a Mistress Me over here, they might not want to quest with their Elsas and Genies anymore. Next up, we got to feature this Ruby Amethyst Spice. This is a top 16 deck list from the same tournament by Alex Coffee over here, playing 4 copies of Mulan, Palace Guard, 2 copies of Diablo, alongside some 2-cost characters like Queen of Hearts and Lumiere, and some 3-cost characters that we're not used to seeing like Elsa Snow Queen and Mother Gothel. This is a damage moving deck. I've been seeing a lot of people call this the Flinger deck. I think that's hilarious because you have everybody's got a weakness.
We're missing some draw power, but I think Ruby Amethyst has got a lot of different packages that they can include for draw power. That Hades, that Ruthless Tyrant, is just always going to net you some cards. It's also very hard to remove, I think. There's not a lot of removal unless you have Hades, of course, but Hades and Hades and Hades and Hades, but you called it. They call it the fling deck. You know, I just want to call it sharing is caring because you know everybody's giving some damage everywhere. You know, and the point is that you have a lot of ways to cure that damage yourself. You don't really have to challenge or like use any other abilities. Some characters just enter play with damage on it, like the Mulan. But the Shift Mulan is also a nice little tech. I think you can get rid of a lot of different threats. Obviously, being able to get rid of some evasive characters as long as they have a non-evasive exerted. But let's focus on the Goofy, and let's focus on the Elsa, and let's focus on the Dumbo and all the other evasive characters you play. So I think you got tons of draw power in this deck, and it might be a reason to want to play Rubiam in this meta.
Also, I want to touch back up on this Mother Gothel, this 3-cost character, because moving damage is the strategy here, right? And this character says whenever one of your characters challenges, you may move 1 damage from chosen character to another chosen character. And it has to be on the opposing side, though. But you can do a lot of interesting math with this card. So if you have Mulan on board and she has 2 damage on her, you can swing into a 3 willpower character. Before the challenge finishes, or even actually goes down, the Mother Gothel will trigger. You move 1 damage away to the character, and then when the Mulan swings, that's going to be 3 damage there. So you can actually do this multiple times. So I think that's why they're playing a lot of one cost characters, because if you have a lot of like damage on your side of the board and your opponent has a character with a lot of willpower, you can constantly trigger this Mother Gothel to move damage multiple times per challenge. So it does kind of punish an opponent for having a wide board. And but in my opinion, when I've tried to use this deck, it requires a lot of like big brain math that I'm just not good at. But this is an interesting way to play Ruby Amethyst, and maybe this is the way that Ruby Amethyst is going to be played this format. And in first place of the Ink Inc. Open 10K, we have David Sahebjam with an Amber Steel aggro deck featuring cards like I Won't Give In, Snow White, and Jim Deere. Maybe David he agrees with you with the Zack Stone that you need Jim Deere instead of the Prince. The ink ability might be important because we are seeing more copies of Bolt, the down but not out dog, the 4 lore quester in Amber Steel. I think this might be a very strong card alongside Pete to protect your characters from Under the Sea or maybe Into the Unknown, and Rapunzel's Tower. Finally, Zack Stone, we're seeing a location in the meta, because we haven't seen any locations be played, I think, since last format, right?
Right. Rapunzel gifted with healing didn't come back, but her tower's here to protect all the other characters that are still left with us. But I honestly got to say, Kevin, David might be on both of our sides. He's got Jim Deere and the Prince in this deck list. Maybe he thinks that the bodyguard 2 cost slot is very important. And actually, you want to play both because you need both. You need to be able to just slap on a bodyguard to protect that Bolt down but not out, protect those Tianas. You don't need to protect Snow White because she can't be challenged, but I will admit you can also protect a lot of other characters by preventing challenging with the John Silver, the ship's cook. I like that he has included 2 copies of this and 2 copies of Pete. I think that we're seeing some meta trends start to shift and shape up. I really believe that when you're able to like practice and play this game more with like a daily repetition, that the meta is going to shift and change at a day-to-day pace. So Pete is going to make more sense right now because of what you just said. Under the Seas and a lot of other removal cards. We're seeing second start to the right. So imagine if you're playing against like a Blurple deck and they're just trying to set up like these big threats and they got like 1 or 2 cards in hand and you just don't let them play their second start to the right. You keep dropping your Pete, playing your Doc, drawing more cards, dropping little guys. They can't answer your characters because they don't have the answers to draw into. You might want to include Pete in your steel decks, guys. Think about it.
Yeah, and this is kind of becoming the triangle format that people were predicting, right? We have Amber Steel as the aggro deck, we have Blurple as the one of the big control decks, and then we have kind of a Purple Steel as like a mid-range deck, you know. But we did see some other outliers earlier, like Blue Green taking the stage. So I do feel like whether you're somewhere within that triangle, you're probably going to consider playing Amber Steel as the aggro deck because it does have some of the highest lore questers in the game, and you even have cards like I Won't Give In, which is a song that'll grab you a 2-cost character from your discard back to your hand. So if you play Doc and your Doc gets banished, you can always top deck I Won't Give In as like an extra 5th or 6th Doc, which I think is kind of crazy. A lot of tournaments happening this weekend. Some huge, like the Ink Inc. Open, that had around 230 players, and some a little smaller, like our local community, Hungry Dragon in Murrieta. They had a tournament hosted by Lorcana France, so huge shout out to you, and it had around 30 plus players. And first place, we have Clay Howell with an Amethyst Emerald deck. We haven't seen Amethyst Emerald yet. At least I don't really see anybody playing this deck anymore, so it's pretty refreshing. We have Pegasus, Kirsten Merfolk, and Rafiki as our 1-cost characters. Probably took quest in the early game, and if you're going second, you drop a Rafiki and your opponent can't quest, so that's always really strong. A lot of evasive characters, Diablo, Go-Go Tamago, Dumbo, Genie, Elsa, all of these characters synergizing with our Dumbo to be able to draw some cards and gain some lore. Louis, a 3-cost alligator that'll give a character Reckless alongside Madame Mim the elephants who bounce back your characters and have on-play abilities like Genie and Louis. And then we have Yzma. The ability to draw 3 cards when you have no cards in hand feels very, very strong. How are you feeling about Amethyst Emerald in the meta, Zach?
Amethyst Emerald was a deck that I certainly favored at the Reign of Jafar format. I felt like it was the best deck in slot, and now we can really have a conversation about it now because Prince John no longer with us, Shift Diablo no longer with us, Friends on the Other Side no longer with us,
Good riddance.
and looking at the deck when what you have to do now with it's just going back to its roots, more of like a tempo pace deck. You have a lot of evasive threats, and you have so many cards available in your toolbox, like Elsa's and Accomplished Mystics, to just Get rid of some nasty board presence, all while applying low to the ground pressure with your Cursed Merfolks and your Genie Wish Fulfilleds. But Pull the Lever, Wrong Lever package is still too good not to include. And again, we don't have friends on the other side. I don't know how often we're going to be choosing our opponents to discard cards with Pull the Lever, but having a little bit of an option there means you can either draw cards like you should be doing, or get rid of one of the last cards in your opponent's hand to just make them play at the top of their deck. But They Never Come Back is also a very interesting card too, just to kind of like freeze the board. And it's imperative to say that like you can kind of dictate what your opponent's going to do with cards like that and cards like Lewis, that alligator from set 8 as well. So it's a very interesting deck. Shout outs to you for taking it down, and who knows, this could be more popular going into the future.
I do want to read They Never Came Back real quick. It's a 3-cost inkable action that says up to 2 chosen characters can't ready at the start of your turn, and then you draw a card. This feels a lot like the Elsa, the Shift Elsa, Spirit of Winter, but the characters have to be exerted already, so that is kind of the drawback. But oftentimes, whenever I shift Elsa or when I use 8 ink to play an Elsa, I feel like I'm ahead of the game, like you said, Zach Stone. I'm controlling what my opponent can do next turn, right? And if you're playing a lot of these 2 Lord Questers like Belle and Genie, or maybe you have a Dumbo set up and you want to get as much value from Dumbo as possible, you can stop your opponent from re-readying their Genies and their Elsas if you're playing a Blurple match. In second place, we have Mike Dog. That's not his name. And in second place, we have an Amber Emerald Lady and the Tramp Dog deck by Dylan Leduc. Shout out you, Molstar, for getting second place at this tournament. Amber Emerald Lady and the Tramp has been popping off in my opinion. I feel like a lot of people don't like playing this deck because it does feel like an aggro cheese deck because you are using Scrump and Under the Sea to wipe the entire board. But I feel like this might be one of the better decks to use Under the Sea in. Scrump is a very strong card, and alongside being able to lower the opposing character's strength to combo off with Under the Sea and put them all to the bottom of the deck, right? You can also just use this to maybe exert a Daisy so that your opponent does not get cards, or a Bobby Zamaruski, so that you can protect your other 2 Lore Questers like Tramp Dapper Rascal, Lady Family Dog, or your Lilo Escape Artist.
Yeah, the ability to just do it multiple times in a turn, I think, is what makes a lot of people favor this card, and as well as just kind of blanketing the board, because just like how you would play like Kita previously in this color combo, just to kind of reduce the strength on your opponent's board to turn your character sideways for free, Scrump can be used in the same way. This item can be flexible to just stop something from having strength for the following turn. A lot of Amethyst decks and Steel decks are just putting tons of power and strength onto the board, and just dropping it down by 2 means you could just have your board for one more turn and just quest out. Doing your lore math is really important in a deck like this, so I'd really consider and play out your turns thinking about how much lore you're gaining, how much you'll gain on the following turn, what type of removal they could have. But removing songs with that Ursula, I think, is going to be one of like your catch-alls, as well as having improvise. I gotta admit, this is a 1-cost Dragonfire against those illusion characters.
And it synergizes with your Lady Decisive Dog. This is a 1-cost character that gains 1 strength every time you play a character, but if she has 3 strength, she'll quest for 3. And we do have a lot of aggro questers in this deck. Elegant Spaniel, we have Daisy, we have Gogo Tamago to burst some lore. So it probably is important to take advantage of our Lady Decisive Dog to quest for 3 sometimes. And if you're missing that 3rd character to play on the board to trigger her ability, you can always just improvise her, give her an extra strength, you draw a card, and now she might have enough strength to quest for 3. So alongside being a great card to use against those illusion characters, it just synergizes perfectly with your overall aggro strategy. And in first place of the multivitamin Turnier tournament, we have another blue-green deck. I believe in this tournament, first and second place was a blue-green deck. Very interesting to see. This one by Lorcana Trainer featuring the Jasmine Royal Commodore. This is a shift character. It's a 6-cost, 5 shift that says when you play this character and you use shift to play her, you can return all other exerted characters to their player's hand. And like we've been saying, people are getting really greedy with their evasive questers, the Dumbos, the Genies, the Elsas. They just love turning those cards sideways. Or if you're playing against the aggro Amber Steel deck, you know they're going to be turning their cards sideways. So there is some scenarios where you can play your Jasmine on turn 1, the Resourceful Infiltrator, and then start using your Jasmine Royal Commodore to shift after you've ramped using your Donald, your Tipo, your Sail, etc. But not only did Emerald Sapphire get first and second place of that last tournament, we have another first place list of the same color combo, the same strategy at the ta-ta for now fabled Case tournament by Zachary K. This one featuring some other cards like Bobby Zimmerowski to dig for maybe the Under the Sea or kind of get rid of your uninkables. We're seeing Bend to My Will in combination with Clarabelle, which I think is very strong. But one similarity that we're for sure seeing in all of these Sapphire Emerald deck lists is that we're seeing the combination of Heads, Held High, and Under the Sea, which is, like we've been saying, one of the ways to have a one-sided board wipe in Lorcana right now.
Yeah, Emerald Sapphire is just getting more popular right now, and you might need to be prepared, no pun intended, for a deck like this coming your way.
And in the same tournament, we had top 4 split first place, and we see an Amethyst Steel deck list with no Dumbo, Zach Stone. We know Dumbo can be a very expensive card right now, and that might shy away some people from building a deck that is as popular as Amethyst Steel. Don't ever discourage yourself into thinking you can't play a tournament because you don't have the $70 elephant in your purple deck. Because as we can see here by Nick D, you can achieve these accomplishments without needing to buy these high-cost meta cards. But we are still seeing some legendaries in here like Yzma, Conniving Chemist to draw cards, Genie Wish Fulfilled, and Dolores Madrigal will also let you draw some cards, right?
Most definitely. And yeah, you don't need the Dumbo. It sounds good, but we could just play the high intensity package that you have with Amethyst Steel and just take over the game with just the amount of like quest power you have towards the late game. It's just a very good deck overall with or without Dumbo.
And before we call it a day, everybody, and Zach Stone included, I want to go over the overall Fabled metagame matrix that we have on inkdex.com. Huge shout out to inkdex.com for putting all of this tournament information. If you guys ever do well at tournaments, you can post your deck list on Twitter and tag them, and they'll upload it to their website, and it makes our job easier. And you could also join our Discord in the links below and put your deck list in our deck list section, and we might feature them in our live streams on Wednesdays and Thursdays. But take a look at this, Zach Stone. We have Amethyst Sapphire and Amethyst Steel as tier 1. I think the tiers are mostly based off of the overall popularity, the meta share, like what you're expected to see. So I think whatever tournament you're playing, whether it be a local game store or a big like regional event at a convention center, you're going to guarantee see some Sapphire Amethyst or some Amethyst Steel in those rounds, followed by Amber Steel and Emerald Sapphire taking some tier 2 spots with Sapphire Steel in popularity.
Yes, it's also kind of, I do want to just kind of highlight that there is like an average price for kind of some of these like color combinations. And we're seeing like the Amethyst obviously be higher because of the cards like Dumbo, of course. So you might want to stick with like Sapphire Steel or Emerald Sapphire if you're looking to stay on like the lower end of prices. But in order to get those excellent results that we're seeing, Amethyst is the way to go. It's just the color of the format. It is here to stay for Fabled, and we have to play a couple DLCs with this meta in mind. So make sure you're paying attention to these trends. Things could change in the next month or so because those DLCs are coming at us pretty quickly.
You know, it's kind of interesting because in like the top 5 meta share, we're seeing 3 Sapphire, but also 3 Steel combination colors. So, you know, while you are saying Amethyst, well, Amethyst is taking up the top 2 slots, it is shared by the Sapphire concept, the strategy of being able to ramp right now alongside the Steel strategy, which is probably the only color combination that has some of the most efficient, effective removal. I do want to highlight the overall win rate matrix because we are seeing some interesting results lately. The Sapphire Steel ramp deck having some very good win rates, but with with only a little bit of a matches to go off that information. Looking at this Emerald Sapphire deck though, 188 matches with a 58 overall % win rate. This might be the control deck of the format, you think?
You know, I think it has the more control aspects. And again, it's the only color, Emerald's the only color with a board wipe. And it's a one-sided board wipe here. So that is just the big consideration, is that you're able to ramp into these board wipes and play these big characters early. But you don't know if Pete, again, the Steel category, right?
Yes.
Pete could shut decks like this down.
Yeah.
And we aren't seeing Pete played in more than like abundance of 2 copies right now. But I think that could change. Like I've always talked about how this is going to be a pick your deck moment type of meta where you have to feel the room and pick the deck that's going to counter what you expect to play against. Because it doesn't seem like you can get a significant advantage by playing like one deck over the other right now.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't think there's like a clear best deck. I think a lot of decks have their flaws. A lot of players are gravitating towards Amethyst Sapphire because it does feel like the most consistent strategy overall, but we are seeing its flaws now. It loses to Under the Sea, you know, pretty drastically, and you can really punish the early game on them by using an Amber Steel aggro deck, which will just quest for a bunch of lore before they could even set up their ramp or their Hades. And we're even starting to see Sapphire Steel take the stage a little bit too. It does have its ups and downs, and I do feel like the meta is a lot more diverse than some people are giving it credit for, because we still have a lot more time to go. So I'm excited to see like people take advantage of the flaws in some of these decks while also sharpening their strategies, because I feel like you said it's an ever changing meta, and it might boil down to what deck are you playing this week to combat what everyone else is doing. So I am curious to see if we're going to start seeing more peak games referee to combat the hyper control Sapphire Emerald decks, or maybe we'll start seeing cards like Ludwig von Drake. That's the Sapphire Emerald, sorry, the Sapphire Amber character that'll snipe a card out of the opponent's hand. Ursa the Deceiver, that's another very important card that was seeing a lot less play recently, but now that we're seeing a lot more songs enter the meta, I feel like Ursa the Deceiver might be a card you might want to play in your Emerald decks. And there's not a lot of Emerald Sapphire being represented, or Emerald Amber. I feel like the aggro decks are kind of being prioritized by Amber Steel, but I do feel like those decks are sleeper decks, like we were saying, man.
There's a lot of sleeper decks I think you can decide to play right now. And if you work on it hard enough and you are dedicated to testing it into the field, I would say go for it, because this meta is not defined as like, Blurple only, or like, Amethyst only. I'm more highlighting that it's the trend right now. And Kevin and I are working on different decks that we are trying to find as far as like playing in Milwaukee at, but we are still unsure of like what we may or may not play. Like there's a lot of cards that are being talked about, and no one can play a deck that's just going to win against every single matchup. Like you're going to have to practice, you're going to have to make some critical deck building decisions, and overall having the experience and the technical play to execute it. But hopefully we can provide a lot of that insight to you guys soon. Thank you again. If you're still with us watching this video, like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you join our Discord with the link below. I know a lot of the people that are recently joining are more active players in the competitive scene. So thank you again for joining the Discord, and stay tuned to Lorcana Goons. We'll see you Goons next time.